If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law.
Before Epstein was the Franklin cover-up. Before that, the Finders. And long before that, the Cleveland Street Scandal. Pedogate Primer is a concise intro and overview of a growing child abuse epidemic worldwide. It features shocking instances of institutionalized and organizational pedophilia throughout history. Churches, cults, the world of arts and entertainment, the government, NGOs, charities, and major corporations are all complicit or culprits in many instances. Pedogate Primer delves into material that for many may seem like the stuff of conspiracy theories. For this reason, the book draws on academic resources, declassified documents, and other reliable sources, and steers clear of conjecture. Such shocking true stories need no embellishment.
Emailrevealer.com. People ask me all the time, hey Ed, are you still a private investigator? I sure am. Go to emailrevealer.com. We handle adoption investigations, infidelity investigations, where you give us your spouse's email address. We trace it back to online dating websites, catch them cheating online. Email tracing, locate or identify somebody from as little as an anonymous email address. Someone owe you money? Back child support? We can find that deadbeat, locate his hidden assets, locate his hidden bank accounts, find his current place of employment, and even assist you in obtaining a judgment and recover that judgment for you. Emailrevealer.com. Digital forensics, computer forensics, cell phone forensics, recover deleted text messages. Create a report that you can use in court. Emailrevealer.com, 800-572-9762. The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, here we go. All right, welcome to the Opperman Report. I am your host. Who am I? Who is this guy? I'm the host. I'm the host of the show, Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting through my website, emailrevealer.com. You can just email me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. If you like the show, be sure and check out our Patreon. We get all the shows you listen to Monday to Friday. I say 9 to 5. What the hell I'm saying? And I get that on Patreon. I don't know if we got on Spreaker too. You go listen on Spreaker. Got a chat room and send out an email notification anytime we put up new content. Whoosh. Okay. Almost canceled the show. Almost didn't do the show tonight. And it's too bad because I got some really, really great stuff to talk about. But I didn't, it's stuff that's so close to my heart and I'm so well aware of that I didn't really do any notes. But it's good stuff. And well, what happened was I went and I took a hike this morning. No, let me start this over. Started out, I took a hike yesterday. Okay? You may not know I moved to Florida. And there's this big fancy trail down here. And it turns out it's right by where I live. Really close. Like walking distance. It's more of a bike trail. And I'm going to get a bike to do it. Yesterday, I said, let me go exploring this trail. Because, trying to lose a little weight. Especially before Vic comes down. And she's coming Sunday morning. Get to see my daughter back. By the way, she just got a great job, too. $20 an hour for a summer internship. And it's a very, very important, prestigious job, too, for this big, important pack. Kid's doing great. I know people laugh at me when I say, oh, Vic's doing great. Okay, all right. Because they hope that she's not. They hope it. So let's get some misery and failure and pain in Ed's life. Ed Opperman, let's take him down. It's not going to happen. So anyway, I hop on the trail, and I go south on the trail yesterday. And I go down I'm 3 miles from the beach, if I want to hop in my car and drive down to the beach. But it turns out with this trail, if I were to ride my bike on it or walk, I'm only about 2.25 miles from the beach. I could really, nice beaches too. There's a cool little beach town like right around the corner from me. I didn't even know when I moved here. I didn't even know it was there, but I know it now. And so I discovered this yesterday. I went walking south about 2.5 miles, 3 miles, and I found out how close I am to the beach, and I was so excited, And there's a couple of overpasses, where it takes you like over the roads, like hills, you got to do. So I was really tired from this yesterday because I'm so out of shape. And today I said, you know what? I want to explore going north. And for some reason, I thought that if I just went a short distance, I would hit this stretch of this trail that goes over water, right? And I started walking, and man, I guess I did about 5 miles in one direction. Okay. And then I could see up ahead where the water was, and I went over the bridge over the water about halfway. And then I said, oh, man, I'm too tired. Let me turn around and head back. And, man, I could barely make it back. As a matter of fact, I stopped at this picnic bench. I took a little nap. Okay, I'll give you an idea. In this heat over here, I had no water with me or nothing, and I'm staggering along here. I'm not used to this kind of much physical activity. Been out of shape for so long. And so then I had a meeting this afternoon, and then after that, got home, took a little nap. And when I woke up about an hour ago, I said, oh, my God, I'm so dehydrated. Can't do the show. I'm so out of it. So I almost canceled, but I didn't because I got a lot of good stuff going on here. Whew. So, but I tell you, I'm so lucky to be living this close to this trail here. Back in Vegas, I went and rented this apartment that was by the Pittman Wash Trail. But I knew it was there, so I specifically picked that place because it was so close to this trail. I'm even closer to this other trail. It is a great trail. I could take this trail all the way, to other cities, other beaches. If I had a little, me and Vic are going to buy a couple of bikes next week when she comes to town. But forget it. If I had one of those like electric bikes that people have down here, I could take this all the way. Ooh, all over the place. And it's a really cool trail. I even found this little bar with outdoor live music and stuff like that. Because I went, I can't talk about it too much because I don't want people to know where I live anymore because there's too many crazy stalkers out there. As a matter of fact, a lot going on this week, and I'm pretty sure that people inserting themselves into my life here, trying to distract me and throw me off the trail, because a lot of stuff came up this week, and one of the things is I had this situation going on for about the past 4 years. This is before I left Vegas. This wacky little stalker situation. And then, by luck, in the last month, I was able to figure out who's doing it. I got to do a whole show about this, about caller ID and automatic number identification. Okay? Because people think, and I used to do an investigation where I would trace prank phone calls and harassing telephone calls with the use of a trap line, okay, which is a phone number that's equipped with ANI, automatic number identification, so that you get a reading of every phone number that calls you on your number that's equipped with ANI. Now, people will say, well, yeah, Ed, that's not fancy. Ed, that's caller ID, where, someone calls you up and you can look on your phone, you see the number that's calling you. Caller ID is different from automatic number identification, okay? Because caller ID you can block by hitting star 57. But what you don't know, if you have a phone number equipped with ANI, automatic number identification, so you only know this stuff if you're a private investigator. And you only know this stuff if you're an insane private investigator that sees or learns about this and says, hey, I can rent out, they're called trap lines, where you can trap the incoming caller's information, their name and address, as well as their phone number. Okay? And sometimes even if it's you got trust me, you got a truckload of information. Okay, with this. Okay, and the average guy will think, well, I can avoid caller ID by hitting star 57 before I make the phone call. Or I can use one of these caller ID spoofing apps that will disguise the phone number, and I can put any phone number in there I want that will show up on this person's caller ID. But if you have a trap line, okay, or caller or automatic number identification, you capture that information even if they are using caller ID block, or they're using one of these caller ID spoofing tools. Which, by the way, I've done shows about reports on this years ago, and I was friends with the guy who had the first caller ID spoofing tool back in New York City. And as a matter of fact, one of the biggest, what they were using it for back in those days, what you could do with it back then, is if, let's say I have your cell phone number, I could call your cell phone with your cell phone number, and this would trick your voicemail into thinking it was you calling to check your own voicemail messages. And if you didn't have a password set in there, I could listen to your voicemail messages. Not myself, but this is what other unscrupulous PIs were doing. And some of the people who figured out how to do this was Paris Hilton and Lindsay Lohan, and they were calling each other up 3,000 times a day to check each other's voicemail messages. And finally, they were banned from using this caller ID spoofing tool. But anyway, I used my own resources and my own techniques to identify who had been stalking and harassing me. I thought it was like a clown, a little foolishness there. Oh, we got to talk about that, Mac, Mr. Shane. What do you call it? But so, anyways, I was able to determine who it was behind this stalking, and then match that with some other information and come up with a fingerprint and matched it like a duplicate, with other, then you could contact people and capture their information and then copy this information, compare it, and you can create a report. I've done this, for our clients, but I had to do it for myself. And wouldn't you know it, the person who I suspected and I tracked down suddenly decided to completely delete all their social media and all their public persona. So that was one thing that happened this week, And then I had this weird client. Sometimes what'll happen is you'll have a client, because if someone wants to disrupt your life, all they can do is just go to your website, place a small order, for a few bucks, and then become a nuisance in your life where they want all your attention, all your constant focus on them rather than the important work that I'm doing, right? And so I think that happened this week as well, or actually in the past month, I think it happened. All right, and I'm always on the lookout for this kind of thing. So let's see how far that goes, because I could really blow things up over there if I had to. But a couple of the biggest things that happened this week is, before I get into all that, let's talk about what's going to be playing tonight. I forgot about that. I apologize. What do we have coming up here? I can look over here. Yes, I can. Okay, one is, it's called, it's not a well-known guest. It's a mother of this man who's in prison for 73 years. Oh, boy. And when you hear the details of the case, and plus the guy's like a diminished capacity, and so his case was totally mishandled from beginning to end. And that's just what you can really get chopped up in this system, man, if you're not paying attention to what's going on. And, you talk to someone, and this poor woman, she's such a sincere woman. She loves her son. She, I'm going to fight. I'm going to get him out. What can you say? Sometimes it's too late, unless there were to be a huge groundswell of attention on this case and where some miracle would happen where they could reopen it. But, under these current circumstances, that's just not going to happen. The guy's sitting in prison for 73 years for charges with really no injuries, no stabbing, no murder, no death. Just, like home invasion and kidnapping. But according to her story, they were invited into the home, and then the son actually made no contact with anybody in the home. It was just more of a bickering kind of a argument and a fight between some young ladies and some young men. This guy was just trying to get a ride in the car. It happens all the time. Heartbreak. So that's one thing. Then the next one I did was a good show. This fellow named Mike Rothschild wrote a book called "The Storm Is Upon Us: How QAnon Became a Movement, a Cult, and a Conspiracy Theory of Everything." I really enjoyed my conversation with Mr. Rothschild. There's some things that he kind of lumped in to the whole QAnon conspiracy and the wacky theories that are going on with that group, and some other things. And some of the things he lumped in are things that I have personal information that I know have much more legitimacy than, of course, QAnon, that I watched from the first week it popped up. But either way, I really enjoyed my talk with Mr. Rothschild, and I'm going to be playing that tonight as well. Now, if you haven't been paying attention to what's going on, and I know you haven't been because everybody's busy with their own lives, Mr. Stephen Schmidt. Okay? Let me pull this up. Mr. Stephen Schmidt. Wait a second. Is that his name? Let me pull this up over here. He's the guy that used to run the Lincoln Project. Let me pull this up. Make sure I got the right name. Stephen Schmidt. Yeah. And there's a movie, right, by the way, called Game Change, and Stephen Schmidt is played by Woody Harrelson, and I encourage you to find this movie. You can find it online for free. It's playing on HBO Max. You have to have HBO Max to get it for free. Let me see here. It's also, you can buy it on Amazon for $2.99, and it's worth it. Okay, and it's about the campaign of John McCain and Sarah Palin. So Stephen Schmidt, you've seen him on MSNBC. He's on the news all the time because he was running the Lincoln Project until they had that issue with the Lincoln Project where one of the founders, Mr. Weaver, was discovered he was hitting on young men and young staffers and prior to his work with the Lincoln Project and making sexual advances toward these young men who were all over the age of 18, by the way. And Cindy McCain, who is the daughter of John McCain, accused Mr. Schmidt of being a pedophile and running a pedophile ring. quote unquote. Okay. So Mr. Steven Schmidt had enough of this, and he went on a Twitter bleep storm this week, calling everybody out, pulling out all the receipts, naming names, calling out poor, is it Cindy McCain or Meghan McCain, the daughter? Okay. And they were even making fun of her at the Correspondents' Dinner last week, saying, "Do you know who my father is?" And I said, "Well, you have a ticket. You can come in. I don't care. Do you know who my father is?" So that's her personality, and she's written this book too, which is just hysterical. And they were putting up excerpts of her book on Twitter about just her throwing tantrums on the campaign, and so self-absorbed with herself, just hysterical. The book is just so funny. But Steven Schmidt's coming out with everything. Now, you got to remember that Steven Schmidt, he was running the John McCain campaign when Sarah Palin was running for vice president. And he's very careful to exclude himself from the vetting of Sarah Palin. And in this movie, too, which is one of those movies, guys, I talk about this all the time, they do these movies that are kind of a whitewash, you know? And it's interesting that Woody Harrelson would be involved in it when his dad was accused of killing JFK, being one of the JFK shooters. His father is in prison for being a political assassin. And there's shady stuff going on there. Anything Woody Harrelson is involved in, I give it a second look, a closer examination. But this movie, Game Change, is a complete and bizarre whitewash of the vetting of Sarah Palin. Now, if you're not aware of my connection to all this, I had a client in Alaska who came to me with her story. She had sold a story to the National Enquirer, where she said she was having an affair with Todd Palin. She was a massage therapist over there in Alaska. This case went on in my life for about a year, where we worked on this case for her, and ultimately, the day that all her material came to my office, Sarah Palin announced that she wasn't going to be running for president after her failed vice president campaign. Now, I had always suspected that the way that Sarah Palin was picked to be vice president was through blackmail of that information of my client given the massage therapy with the happy endings. This was being documented and videotaped, and that information was used as blackmail against someone in the McCain campaign in order for them to choose Sarah Palin. And this made perfect sense to me at the time. Okay, now I found out some new information this week, and that is that Steve Schmidt, who was the campaign manager, calls out Paul Manafort and Mr. Davis. What's his last name? Let me pull this up here. Rick Davis, I think it is. Rick Davis. Rick Davis and Paul Manafort had a lobbying company together where they were getting all this money from Russians in Ukraine. As a matter of fact, Mr. Steve Schmidt, the former campaign manager, posted an article you can find online. In fact, I'll even put a link here in the show here, description. And it's called Picture This, John McCain Visits Criminal's Yacht. And you can find this in Gawker, gawker.com. The date of this story is 9/11/2008. Fitting data to do this. And I have a picture of John McCain and Mr. Rick Davis boarding this yacht of Mr. Raffaello Folieri, who was the day after he was convicted of a multi-million-dollar fraud. And who else is there too is Anne Hathaway, the glamorous actress. Anne Hathaway is there as well. And you can see Rick Davis, pockets stuffed with Russian money, taking his candidate there, John McCain, onto this yacht to meet with Anne Hathaway. You get to my age, I mean, the age of Mr. McCain there, a young, pretty lady can sway your what do you call sway your attention and it's possible. So it turns out Steve Schmidt, especially if you watch this film here, what's this thing called again here? Now, like I said, I'm very dehydrated, so I apologize. Game Change with Woody Harrelson. Now, Steve Schmidt says, hey, I never vetted Sarah Palin. It was Rick Davis who vetted Sarah Palin. Okay? Because he's CYA. He's covering his assets. Okay? Because my dealing with the Palins and anybody in Alaska who knew the Palins was there is no way you could spend 5 minutes with these people and not know that they are the definition of white trash, that they got all kind of substance issues, they got all kind of criminal behavior issues, and just low class and intelligence problems with IQ issues. Okay. So and they're trying to say, oh my God, Sarah Palin, she's a natural actress. But then as soon as we started asking her about these questions, like, hey, do you know where Russia is? Do you know who won World War II? And these tough questions, she didn't know anything. Okay, but the thing is, there's no way that you would meet Sarah Palin or Todd Palin. And you know, I talk about him. He was a snowmobile racer. Okay, and Sarah Palin was like a Hooters girl. She worked at a bar, you know, and one of these, like a waitress, you know. Became mayor down there in Wasilla, and I talk about all the corruption that went down there in Wasilla. I did a whole show about this. You can look for the old show, because otherwise we'll be here forever. I played it this week. You'd find it if you go in the last 10 days of the Spreaker archives, Ed Opperman's connection with the Sarah Palin, Todd Palin sex scandal. Okay, go in there and pretty much lay out the whole thing there. Now, a couple of things. I talked to you about how, because I learned a lot this week, man. See, I never understood. I knew blackmail was involved, and I thought it was the Palins doing it. And now I realize if there was blackmail involved and there was state-sponsored intelligence operatives in this, it would have been through these Paul Manafort, Rick Davis lobbying agency and their connections with the Russians and getting this money from this Russian mobster guy here too as well. Okay. I also found out, see, you know, you look back at your life and you say, man, was I gullible. Man, I missed that. What a fool I was. Okay? Because like I said, first of all, I was totally fooled by this whole situation where I thought that the Palins were behind this blackmail. But then, you know, looking back, they didn't have the savvy for this. They didn't have the balls for this. They didn't have the connections, the ability to pull this off. But you got a couple other guys here who did. A couple of other guys here who are well funded by the Russians. Okay? Russian money, they were floating Russian money. And now I see it. I didn't see it all this time, but now I see it. It's taken 10, 11, 12 years for me to see this. But guess what else I discovered? I had no idea the close relationship between Joel Lieberman, who was the vice presidential candidate for Al Gore, and he was close buddies with John McCain, flew on McCain's campaign plane, and there was a lot of possibility that he was going to be picked as vice president. That McCain was going to pick a conservative Democrat to be his vice presidential candidate. And they discussed this in this film, Game Change. Okay? Now, if you go back and listen to my whole story about my investigation with the Palins, that led to a congressional investigation. A lot of times you'll hear me say, I was involved in a congressional investigation. Since then, I'm involved in several others and congressional hearings as well. But the one that I speak about the most involving Sarah Palin was the one that involved the Secret Service misbehavior in Colombia. And it turned out that my client was aware of one of those Secret Service agents doing the same thing in Alaska. In fact, she had him as a client, and he didn't pay her there. And this is how she was inserted into this congressional investigation. Now, you know who ran that congressional investigation? Joel Lieberman. Joel Lieberman ran that investigation, okay? And I tell the story, and I've always told this story as a funny little story. Ha, 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 ha. That everyone always complaining about how they can't get a hold of me, and then they want, especially back in those days. Remember, I didn't carry a cell phone for years and years and years. And people would say, well, Ed, what's your direct line? And I said, well, call the 800 number, And that number rings to the phone right in front of me on my desk, and I'll get an email notification, and it'll be transcribed. By the way, that number has automatic number identification. And everything goes around in a circle. There's always an arc in my stories. I can't help it. So so I'll get a call on there, and it'll get transcribed, and I can read it by an email notification, or I can listen to the voicemail, and then you have a little WAV file that you can, if you need it for evidence, if you have going to court, taking somebody to court, or getting a criminal restraining order against somebody, you have all that lined up there for yourself there, right? Oh, God. And I always laugh about how Lieberman's staff would always say, well, but Ed, what's your cell phone number? We need to, Ed, I know, thanks for the 800 number, but we need to get a hold of you directly. Okay. And I would say to them, no, listen, that's the number. That's the number. But Ed, what's your direct number? No, you don't understand. That's the number. If it rings and I hear it ring, I pick it up, I say hello. Okay. And if I'm on another call or I can't take the call, then it'll take a message and I'll get an email notification. You just leave a message, and if I can call you right back, I'll call you right back. But Ed, what's your number? I says, no, that's the number. That's the only number. That's the number. But for some reason, that people couldn't get that through their head. And at one time, too, I had this client who was in Rikers Island, and one time I called her up. No, she had called. No, I had given her a number. The guy says, okay, I need you to get a hold of me. So use this phone number that was a number that was used for my burglar alarm. Okay. And says, call on this number. Because, an alarm goes off, there's a phone that calls the central station. So I had that number, and I gave her that number to call me up on. So from that point on, she thought that was a secret hotline to get a hold of me. That's the only number she would call. And I said, no, this is a one-time thing. And then she was giving that number to her lawyer and to her investigator and stuff like that. They're all leaving messages on this freaking number. That would never, because they think it's a secret hotline to Ed Opperman, when meanwhile, they had the freaking number. And that was the best way to reach me. I tell you this, because one day I'm on the phone with Joe Lieberman, and he calls him and goes, oh, Ed, Mr. Opperman, I want to thank you so much for what you're doing for us here in this campaign, for this investigation and all the Secret Service misbehavior. My staff wants to know why you won't give them your cell phone number. Senator, man, it's just, like, they have the number. The number you just called me on, that's the number. That's the only number to reach me. There's no better way to reach me than that number. Now, the funny part is the 800 number will ring to. There's a ring to number, which would be a 702 number. That is the phone that I pick up. So that phone is, if it rings, okay, if you call the 800 number, it's going to ring. And if you call that number directly, it's going to ring. But it's the same thing. If I'm on another call, you're going to get a busy signal. You're going to get the voicemail. It's the same exact thing. So I can give them the other number. They think they got a hotline. But if they call that, then I don't get the email notification with the message. Okay? And plus, I don't get the answer. I can't capture their numbers, because you can see their number. You can call it right back. I'll call them right back directly if they give you a different number, Call them at their hotel room and stuff like that. But now I find it. I said to him at one point, I says, oh, so what we found out here, this confirms everything I've been saying in my Sarah Palin investigation, right? And there was dead silence at the other end, like I'm an idiot. And I was, well, we just want to thank you for everything you're doing over there. Brushed me off. And now I realize why. Okay, this guy doesn't want to clear Sarah Palin in any possible way, man. He doesn't want to confirm my Sarah Palin story in any possible way because he's friends with John McCain. He's that close with McCain. And McCain himself is quoted in these books and in this film saying, if I give any problems to Sarah Palin, she'll start attacking me. So there is that dirt. There was that blackmail dirt on there. On McCain, on the McCain campaign, it came from these guys with these Russian money and these Russian connections, Manafort and then Rick Davis, okay? And all this time, I had it all wrong. And I'm saying, how could anybody meet this woman, this Palin family, and not know that they're complete white trash, low-life, petty criminals? And listen to the guy talk about their poker game. They had a weekly poker game where there would be fistfights out on the lawn at the end of the night. All kind of. This was no secret to anybody in Alaska. Okay, and even still, even in Game Change, they try and portray the Palin family as somehow, or they're these fundamentalist Christians. And I hate to say it, but Broomfield, Nick Broomfield did his documentary film about Sarah Palin, and I contacted him. I said, "Hey, Nick, man, I'm the PI in this thing, man. I'm doing a report on this. I'll say we have all her stuff. I'll send it to you." And he said to me, "Oh, I wanted to believe her, but I didn't. I wanted to believe my client, Shaylee, but I didn't believe her." But then later on, there was articles where he said he did believe her, but he portrayed the Palins the same way as these right-wing Christian evangelicals. And that's the furthest thing from the truth about this family. Todd Palin's sister was arrested for burglaries and then a DUI. Well, she was doing burglaries with her 4-year-old child along with her. And then when she went to turn herself into the police for a warrant, she brought her 4-year-old child. You have no idea the kind of trash this family is. And I'm not saying it's just, you can just Google it. And now you see, all this stuff, the issues that went on with this family. So there's no way. Here's to sum all this up, what I'm trying to tell you, because the people don't understand what the hell I'm talking about anymore. I was talking last week about Roe versus Wade and about how these young women that are being sex trafficked and are street homeless, drug addicted, give birth, that if they were forced to carry their babies to term, would give birth to premature babies that would need millions of dollars of surgeries and NICU and ICU care, And I get a message saying, "Well, Ed, if you don't want your baby, you can deliver to the fire station. And there's no consequences for that. You could just bring your baby and give it up there at the fire station." Okay, so people think that someone who's homeless and sex trafficked and on heroin or meth is going to somehow be able to give birth to this baby, this premature baby, like a 3-pound baby, and just bring it to the fire station. A baby that's addicted to meth and heroin. They don't realize that the woman's going to go to the emergency room, give birth to the emergency room, and Child Protective Services is going to take that kid. You don't have to bring it to the fire station. That kid's never going to leave the hospital, But they just, this fantasy world of how things work in real life. It's just the saddest, most horrible thing. So what I'm trying to sum up for you here, again, with the Sarah Palin thing is that, first of all, I had no idea the relationship between Lieberman and McCain. That all makes so much sense to me right now. And all along, I thought it was the Palins who had the bright idea to pull this blackmail and pull this off and get into the seat of the vice president, when no, it was the guy who vetted her out, okay, according to Mr. Steve Schmidt. Okay, and that's Rick Davis, okay, awash in Russian money, whose job it was to vet out Sarah Palin, see if she was fit to be vice president of the United States of America. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, no one can sit with that woman for 5 minutes and think she's qualified and has a healthy state of mind and the moral background and the brains to be able to do that. So my theory was right. There was blackmail, there was insertion, but it wasn't the Palins that did it. It was the Russians. Okay? Now, you want to tell me, hey, Ed, I read an article, Ed, I clicked on a link, Ed, I watched a movie, Ed, I watched a documentary. I live this, okay? I live this my life. And I also talk about soon a couple of shows about my personal involvement with spooks and how my life was infiltrated by different foreign agents, intelligence agents during this period of time. And there was always one that I assumed she was from Kosovo. She was an orphan, a child orphan prostitute in Kosovo who came to this country and had a very bizarre trajectory where she went to college in a certain place. She went to Betty Ford Clinic. A very bizarre trajectory of this young lady who inserted herself in my life right around when I was involved in all this, when my house was getting broken into, when my dog was being drugged, when my safe was being opened and materials were being replaced. And now I believe if it was state-sponsored espionage at that time, I believe it was Russian. Anyway, but what do I know? What do I know? Okay, we're going to take a commercial break. You'd think that people would... anyway, take a little commercial break. Let's have it do. Oh, my God, 40 minutes. We're going to go over time today, guys. How do you like that? Be right back. Hey, you know what? Let's skip the message. Okay, I'm on a roll here. I'm on a roll. We don't need those ads. I'm not getting paid for those ads anyway. All right? I don't need a break. Second half of the show that I want to talk about is called Rick's Cabaret. Rick's Cabaret in Cassablanca. Okay? And the idea of Rick's Cabaret in Casablanca, it was there in Istanbul, I guess it was, right? And the idea was that the Nazis were there, and there were American gambling people there, and all kinds of different, around the same casino, all these different factions were there that would be enemies, but this was some kind of a neutral territory where people could talk to each other and work with each other and cooperate and drink with each other and socialize with each other and date each other as women. Okay. A great movie, man, Casablanca. If you've never seen it, I recommend it. You know, beautiful romance, and also to a war type movie too as well, World War II. Now, I grew up, and how do I apply this to my own life? Well, I grew up in Staten Island. I moved to Staten Island when I was 13 years old, 12 years old, and I was still in middle school when I moved to Staten. I was in the 8th grade, and I forget. Well, I know what it was. And this isn't even in my notes, but someone was telling this story about Madonna down in Miami and how she was dating this fellow who was an organized crime figure who owned these nightclubs down in Florida, wound up going to prison for his involvement in witness tampering and a home burglary where he stole this safe and a couple of bank robberies and stuff. He took all this stolen money. The guy was from Staten Island. And he took all this money and he spent it buying these nightclubs in Miami, and he wasn't dating. I forget his name right now, Cielo, something like that. I forget his name right now, but you can find the information. It's out there. If you really need it from me, I'll mention it next week. Now, the home of the jeweler he broke into was right in my neighborhood in Staten Island. I used to walk by that house all the time. Went in there, broke into a safe. And then when he was being suspected in that case, he threatened witnesses, intimidated witnesses, all kind of stuff like that. But there was another incident with this. One day I was walking into the Staten Island Mall, and one of the security guards runs up to me and goes, "Eddie, get out of here, get out of here. The bank just got hit. Get out of here. The cops are coming." Because people would see me and just assume. Eddie, you don't want to hang around for this. Get out of here. He goes, "You must be up to something." You know? And so I got out of there. I'm not going to kid you. But it was just kind of like this assumption. And I started thinking about that. It says, but the thing is, and Peter, tell that story. And I said, "Oh, yeah, come on. Did you say you know everybody?" I didn't know this guy, by the way, but I knew who he was. He didn't know. Maybe he knew me. I don't know. But the thing is, I said, well, you have to understand the way Staten Island was in those days. That a good 20% of the families there were all involved in organized crime and mafia families and stuff like that. But then, on the other hand, so many of the people who lived there were firemen and cops and worked for the prosecutor's office and stuff like that. FBI agents, DEA agents. It was like Rick's Cabaret, where you had these full-time criminals, career criminals, and these career law enforcement people, sometimes from the same family, married into the same family, or, were socialized at the same restaurants, at the same bars, and neighbors. You're a neighbor. Hey, my neighbor is an organized crime guy. He's out there importing heroin. Has a horse, like my neighbor had a racehorse, And what kind of business? I'm in the meat business. I'm in the wholesale meat business. Okay, but I got a racehorse. Yeah, I've got a racehorse. Yeah. Okay. And then, so the cops and law enforcement and organized crime and all these characters all mixed, and we all socialize with each other. I can remember too when I was a private investigator, young private investigator, used to work out of this office in Brooklyn, where I went in there one day. The guy who ran the office, who was his office, he just let me hang around and help him out and do things and stick my nose into things and help out. But he was a full-time organized crime defense investigator, big shot. And he would do bug sweeps and stuff like that. I remember walking in there one day, and there's the FBI going through his files, right? Because there was a search warrant, right? But everybody's cool with each other, drinking coffee, talking back and forth, like Rick's Cabaret. Both sides, it's business. This is business. There's no reason for us to be rude to each other and argue with each other, hostile, because you're doing your job, I'm doing my job. And so I've always been able to compartmentalize that, working for the defense. I'm working for the defense. Someone over there is working for the prosecution. Another case, I could be working for the plaintiff. Then there's a criminal element to that case too. So we're in coordination with the prosecutor's office against the defendant that we're suing in civil litigation. Okay? Perfect example would be the Epstein case, where this or the one I'm working on right now. I told you this. I got this woman who was a child, raped as a child, and it was videotaped. We got the production of child pornography. So we have a criminal prosecution we're trying to advance, and also to our civil litigation we're trying to advance. Okay, and then normally I'm a defense investigator, but this would be a case where we're working in coordination with the prosecution. And I can do that. I can one day work for the defense, the next day work for the prosecution, and have no conflict of interest. If you're not in the same case, but you can do that. You can kind of compartmentalize yourself and work with these people without passing personal judgment and without getting personal emotions involved. Okay? And I can recall, too, I had two incidents where in Arizona, I had a safe deposit box, and in Manhattan, I had a safe deposit box. As a matter of fact, I had two in Manhattan, because the first place I went there one day, and it was where they didn't have your name. Neither one of these safe deposit box companies, they didn't have your name. Okay, you went in there, you paid them in cash, and you had a code number and a key to get into your box. You had to punch in your key code number that no one else knew. You get through there, then they would walk in there with you with their key. They put their key in, you put your key in, and then you could take your box out. You take it to a little private room where there were scales in there. Okay, that's one of the scales for, some people need to weigh diamonds. Oh, okay, right? Little digital scales. Okay, they're weighing their diamonds. So if you had a transaction with someone, you could both go in there. He could have his box with some cash. I would have my box with something else in there. And then you'd meet in the little room there and then switch boxes. And everybody's happy. In a nice, safe place where, you can't get out. If someone tries to rob the other guy, you're not getting out of there. You can't shoot your way out of this joint. And that's one of the ways things are done. So the one in Manhattan was in the Galleria Mall in Manhattan. I think it was like 54th Street or something like that. And I remember there was a bar out in front, and you'd go hang out at this bar while your buddy was in there doing his stuff in the safe deposit box room, or my buddy was hanging out at the bar while I was in doing my stuff in there. And if you looked around the bar, you had your Colombians over there, you had Jamaicans over there, you had your organized crime Italians over there, you had your other guys over here, who knows what they're up to, CIA, whatever they're up to. But, like that bar in Star Wars, everybody, like Rick's Cabaret, once again. You look around the room, you say, well, everybody's up to something. Okay? But you don't stick your nose into people's business, you keep your mouth shut. I see nothing. It was kind of funny, too. So one time, the place was going out of business, and I went there to, to pay up my bill and to, put something in the box or take something out of the box. And the guy says, oh, no, thank God you came here because, we're shutting down. This is like our last day, So you got to get your stuff and get it out of here. And you got to pay us what you owe us. I says, what the hell? What are you kidding me? I had to take like a plastic bag and fill it up with cash and walk out of that place with a plastic bag full of cash with my hand on my gun. Okay, I'm getting into a cab. Okay, to get out there and move my. And he says, "Oh yeah, that's other companies taking over your account. They just bring it over there and they put it right in there." And I'm like scrambling through the streets of Manhattan with a see-through bag. You can see the whole bag full of money. And then another time when I was out on bail, I went back to the place in Arizona there. And that was kind of funny, too, because I was kind of broke at this point. You know, a lot of my money had been seized by the authorities. And I went into that safe deposit box place, and I told the guy, and I owed him like $300. It wasn't a lot of money. And I said to him, yeah. I said, listen, I got into my box. I know I owe you money, but there's probably money in the box. You know, so if you just get me in there and look inside the box, if there's money in it, I'll pay you. So we go in there, and we take the box out, and the guy was kind of aggressive with me, and he wanted to look in the box with me and see the money to get himself paid. So when we opened up the box, I remember it was a really big box. I had a couple of guns in there. Okay, there was no money, okay? But I had a couple of guns and some other paperwork and things like that. And I remember reaching in, taking the guns out, tucking them in my waist, and looking at the guy. So, now, you want to collect money from me now? Okay, remember that agreement we had a minute ago? Things have changed. You know, I never paid him the money. I think I gave him like half or something. I had some cash in. I paid him half or something like that. But the idea of this guy strong-arming his way into my box and getting his payment from me was out the window at that point. Now, I tell you these stories about Rick's Cabaret and Staten Island organized crime stuff, these stories of people from opposite sides being able to work with each other. Because another development comes up this week where someone comes to me and they're telling me, well, Ed, we have information about some of the survivors and some of the plaintiffs in the Jeffrey Epstein case and the Ghislaine Maxwell case and these folks. And their background is not what you think it is. And they've got shady backgrounds and they're corrupt and this and blah, 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 blah. Now, I got to tell you, almost every case I've ever worked on, you know, there's issues with credibility. There's issues with people's background. There's, especially, too, in cases where there's like sex trafficking, you have a sex trafficking victim, a survivor of sex trafficking. That's all they know. So very often, too, in their life, you know, later on, they went into the sex business. They went to escort service or something like that. And possibly with sex trafficking minors as well. You know, that's what they know. That's what the life they came out of. Now, that doesn't change their victimhood or their survivor status as a plaintiff. They have a right to be compensated, okay? And also, too, now I've been offered to work for the defense in these cases, okay? And you want to know what, man? I would have no problem working for the defense. I've never accepted it. And especially now, mostly because I'm in the public eye, and for people who, if there was, they'd say, "Oh my God, Ed's he's a backstabber, he's a traitor. We can't trust him because look, he went and worked for the defense in this case, and there's a moral, we have a moral white knights and white hats in this case against evil. It's good against evil. It's black against white. Okay, and Ed's working for the black now." Just like this whole thing with Lisa Bloom, you know, people who are naive and unsophisticated in this area will say, well, how could Lisa Bloom work for Harvey Weinstein? Well, she's an attorney. This is what you take your clients. You know, every client, no matter who they are, deserves a vigorous defense, and they deserve to hire competent counsel. They deserve to hire competent investigators to advance their case, their rights, that their rights are protected, even if they're a disgusting piece of garbage, okay? And in many ways, I can work with somebody and overlook that they're a disgusting piece of garbage, okay? And I'm seeing people come to me with this situation this week with this black and white. Well, Ed, you don't understand, Ed, that these people aren't the good guys you think they are. Okay. Oh, really? Okay, gee whiz. Oh, my goodness, I'm so gullible and naive. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just involved in this all day long with the people involved, you know. And then some of these theories you hear them, they're just crazy, you know. You hear some things, man, that are on the internet, on Twitter and stuff like that. And when you talk to the people actually involved, they just have no idea what you're talking about, you know. And I'll check these things out. You know, with the Amber Heard case, I've heard things, you know, I checked it out. You know, what do you know about this? What do you know about that? I heard this story. What do you think? Can you look into it? Okay, I'll put you in touch with a witness, with my source for that story. Let's see where it goes. Okay, now, but this black and white, good guy, bad guy thing here, that's really mostly an internet thing. Internet reporting, podcasting, tweeting, blogging, everything but actually working the case, being involved. But hey, who am I to argue? Because they got 200,000 Twitter followers, so they must know what they're doing, right? They must know what they're talking about, right? Because that's how things work nowadays, right? Doesn't matter, what your pedigree is, what you've done. Just well, if you've got more followers than you, they must be right. Yeah. Now, I would say that if I'm a Sharpie guy, and I found some information about a prosecution witness, two things you can do. You can take that information, go to the defense and say, hey, listen, you want to hire me? I got information that you want. I have information that you need. Would you like to hire me? Okay. And I got to tell you, they'd hire me in a minute, I got people coming to me all the time, all over the place, all different kind of stuff, right? But for some reason, these top-notch reporters, first of all, I don't think they've thought of that, and secondly, I don't think they'd get hired. I think that people would look at their track record and the things they're working on, and they'd kind of say, what is this guy? What's he doing? What's he done before? Anything? And now he's got this information. What is it? NDAs. Do we even want to bother and go down the road of, writing up NDAs with this guy and, put him on retainer and then find out that, it's just craziness? So what is the motivation then? You want to expose plaintiffs and survivors in litigation. For what reason? For Twitter hits and followers and tweets and retweets? And is that it? Because like I said, if I wanted to go down that road, if I wanted to advance the defense and I wanted to discredit the prosecution, I'd go get paid for it. I'd get $1 million. Case like that, you get $1 million. Right? But no, that's not even on my radar. This is not even on someone's radar that's a possibility and that's the normal thing that they would do. No, I'm going to expose them on my Twitter feed and my blog and my podcast. For what? You're still damaging the defense, but for free? That's the honorable way to do this? It's somehow dishonorable to say, you know what, man, the guy deserves a defense. Let me go work for the defense and get paid, and go through the motions and, do what you got to do and help the defense. Or to say, no, I have a moral high ground. I'm exposing people. Because that's the moral high ground. That's the righteous thing to do. Truth, justice, and the American way. Same results. But for somehow, some way, people think that one is an honorable path and one is not. I can't understand that. Okay. And like I said, maybe it's because of the way I grew up. Maybe it's because of my life's experience in these areas that, people just go to work and come home and, and you can sit down, in a conference room with the prosecution. If I have a client who's a defendant, and you can sit down in the prosecution, and especially when I was doing a lot of digital forensic investigations, where, the DA would have their DFI and the defense would have me, or maybe I'd have another guy with me. And, we'd be going over back and forth, and you'd look at the opposing DFI and you'd kind of say, well, okay, I get what you're saying there. Yeah, but what about this? What? And we're kind of like talking like adults, like trying to come to the truth. Now, of course, the DA doesn't want that. They want to win their case. The defense doesn't want that. The defense really wants to win their case, because they got a guy who's going to go to prison. They may not be too happy with you when they come out. So you have to take that into consideration as well. But a couple of guys, laymen, workers, can look at each other and say, yeah, I see what you're doing there. And you know what? I think you're right. I can't say you're right, but I'm looking at you like I'm nodding my head at you that you're right. And I see this is going to be an uphill, thing for me here to overcome. We're going to try it. I'm going to talk to my client here and try and, let's see what's going on. So what I'm trying to get to here is, and I hope I'm making sense. It's been a long day. Like I said, I'm dehydrated. And it's been a long week. I got people busting my balls. I'm catching people stalking me for 5 years. I got this revelation to me, the Sarah Palin thing. And then I got this other thing. Itching up my butt. So I hope I'm making sense. I hope I'm making sense to you here. Things are a little bit more complicated. And I see no benefit in advancing the defense of Ghislaine Maxwell or Jeffrey Epstein or any of these people just for a byline on an article. And if you really know what you're doing, you can finesse these things. Where, you can still get a public article, and maybe it comes out, guess what, in somebody else's name. Okay? You feed the information to someone, and that information gets out there for purposes, reasons to advance your goals, and still, you work the job behind the scenes. So this it's all shades of gray. Maybe that's what I should have named this segment, All Shades of Gray. And it's not all black and white. And especially people that are survivors of this area of trauma. And I was going to do a whole thing too tonight about forgive and forget and trauma and how, we when you suffer a trauma, one of the mechanisms, psychological mechanisms, is to forget, and how I forgive, but I try not to forget, because you're going to run into that problem again with the same people, the same problem. So you can forgive them, but you got to keep your eye on them and not let them, screw you twice. That's just bad. That's bad business. But we're out of time, and I hope I got through to somebody out there. Someone's paying attention. Maybe Joel Lieberman. I'll get a call from him. Well, you said you gave me the phone number. You said that was the only number you had. Now I find out it was another number. John McCain's a wonderful man. I don't know. God rest his soul. I don't understand it. But why you said to me that there was a number and there wasn't a number. Anyway, guys, good night.